I didn't read it. I told you guys already. We'll get Aspinall versus Jones done. Jon Jones versus the heavyweight fight will happen. Just relax. I'll announce that soon. Tom Aspinall.
Oh, we got the big International Fight Week card announcement. Oh my goodness. And it honestly is pretty underwhelming. Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira is cool. That's a cool fight. It's what we expected to be announced. I personally would have preferred Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan. I don't think that Charles Oliveira has earned this shot. He's coming off a win over Michael Chandler. If that's the case, if that's what we're giving out title shots for, I would have honestly much rather have preferred Ilia versus Paddy Pimblett, because at least there's some beef there. You know, there's some history, and I honestly think that would sell better than Ilia versus Charles. But cool, two very entertaining fighters. We're guaranteed action, I think, and I am early predicting, I guess, like a second or third round. I could even see first round. I could see Ilia finishing Charles in any round, really. But Ilia by KO. I think he's going to KO Charles Oliveira. He's far too hittable, and he's getting up there in age as well. And honestly, I don't really know if I understand the matchup. Arman is there, Paddy is there, with history with Ilia. I'm not saying that he's actually earned it based off merit more than Charles has, but at least Paddy is on some kind of a win streak. Charles Oliveira is coming off of 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. His two most recent wins being over Beneil Dariush and Michael Chandler, dude. I'm not really sold on it at all. At some point that has to factor in. I don't understand it. But then Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. Cool fight. It's the only fight at flyweight that makes sense, really, besides Pantoja moving up to fight Merab or Manel Kape versus Pantoja. But Manel Kape is now going up against Royval, which is another cool fight on the card. But I'm picking Pantoja by second round submission. I think he takes Kai Kara-France's back relatively easily and gets him out of there, I believe, but back onto Royval versus Kape. That's a really hard one to pick. That might actually be the toughest one to pick on the entire card, Kape versus Royval. They're both in great form, and this is a true number one contender fight. Early predictions, honestly, going to be Royval. I think he might have too much maybe on the ground. He might be able to scramble up, tie up Manel Kape a little bit. He's a little longer as well. But Manel Kape just has that speed advantage, dude. He is so fast with closing distance, can fight out of both stances. He's very slick, man, barring any eye pokes. I think he could get this one done against Royval. So I'll pick Royval. Oh, sorry, I'm fucking picking Kape, my bad. Jonathan Deniz versus Tafa. Who gives a shit? Deniz probably. Dariush versus Moicano. That's a tough one because Dariush's biggest issue has always been how chinny he is. The man can't really take a big shot, but Renato Moicano doesn't really hit that hard. So I actually think this is a winnable fight for Dariush because I think he can scramble up with Renato Moicano, maybe even get the better of him there. But Moicano's a pretty big lightweight despite being a former 145er. He's pretty big. But I don't know, it's a pick'em for me. I would honestly lean Dariush though, despite him being at the end of his career, I would say. But I do think that he has the skill advantage there. I think he has the skill advantage. Paulo Costa versus Kopylov, that's a tough one, but I would honestly lean Kopylov. I think I lean Kopylov. Paulo Costa has a big blockhead. He can take shots. He really can. But Kopylov, I just think is just way slicker on the feet, and he's been far more active. I just cannot pick Paulo Costa with his level of activity whatsoever. Jack Hermanson versus RoboCop, brother. My guy RoboCop. Fuck me, dude. My biggest fraud check of all time was when I called out RoboCop as the guy to beat DDP before he gets finished by the Killer Gorilla. Like a couple days later, shit was hilarious. But coming back against the very inactive Jack Hermanson, I'm picking Gregory Rodriguez by first round KO. I think he's going to slump this motherfucker in the first round. And Araujo versus Cortez, don't care. Don't care. Simple as that. Don't care. Won't speak on it. But this is truly the most anticipated fight of the year for me since we're no longer getting Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makachev. This one skyrockets to the very top. Maybe aside from JDM versus Islam, but I'm honestly not as intrigued by that matchup as this one because I don't think it's as close as this one is. This one is genuinely very, very hard to pick. You have Dricus du Plessis, plot armor, very well-rounded, and also underrated skill set for how technical he actually is. Because like I've said about MMA fans, a lot of you guys just don't know what the fuck you're looking at. So you just run with this idea that DDP is not skilled when he is extremely skilled, right? But Khamzat Chimaev, he's kind of a first round merchant. He just kind of is, right? People who go against that narrative, you need to understand is that it's not a narrative. It's just how it is, right? Pay attention to Khamzat Chimaev's last like 3-4 fights, right? If it doesn't finish in the first round, he slows down and he looks extremely beatable past that first round. It's just how it is. It's the way that he fights. Heavy energy expenditure in that first round. He can overpower just about anybody. Can he do it against Dricus du Plessis? I don't know. And that's the intriguing part, right? None of us really know how this fight will go because these are two fighters with very, very different styles. Very different styles. And we've seen Dricus taken down by Robert Whittaker, right? We've seen him taken down before. So theoretically, it would make sense that Khamzat would be able to get him down, but will his defense be good enough on the ground to avoid having his fucking mandible caved in the first round? I have no clue, dude. I have no clue. But my prediction is Dricus du Plessis, and I think that he'll finish Chimaev in the later rounds. I do think he'll finish him in the later rounds. I think it's similar prediction to my prediction between JDM and Islam, early prediction there. I think JDM finishes Islam late, and I think that Dricus du Plessis finishes Chimaev late. Because I think about Chimaev, the way he looked against Usman in rounds 2 and 3, where he arguably lost those rounds, right? 10-8 in the first, but arguably lost rounds 2 and 3. I actually don't think it's that arguable. I think it's just clear that he lost those rounds. He was very inactive and was getting outstruck. And I think if you give those opportunities to somebody like Dricus du Plessis, who throws those big Donkey Kong hooks, right, looking like he's on roller skates, I just don't know how Chimaev actually survives until the end against someone like Dricus, because Dricus is one of those guys who's always coming forward trying to finish you. Right, Usman was very complacent against Chimaev in the second and third. I think you put the pace on, right? You get on the front foot a little bit more. I think you finish Chimaev. I think Usman finishes Chimaev potentially in a 5-round fight there, right? And that was old man Usman with no knees. Man has no knees. I believe that Dricus does some nasty things to Chimaev, you know, barring him getting finished in the first round. I think any other scenario, it gets past that first, unless Chimaev goes in there with a very measured approach, right, and doesn't just bum rush Dricus off the bat. Because if he bum rushes Dricus off the bat and fails to finish him, he's finished, I believe. But maybe he comes in with a more measured approach. Maybe he comes in with a more technical approach and more of an approach that is more indicative of going 5 rounds, right? A style that would allow him to better last 5 rounds. I'm not sure what to expect here, but if, like I said, if Chimaev comes in as we expect him to, I believe he loses this fight in the late rounds. I think he gets finished, but I can also see a decision victory. The only way I see Chimaev winning this one is by first, maybe second round sub, if we're being real generous to him. This is going to be a really great fight, man. The build up to this fight is going to be awesome. The trash talk from Dricus, the 25 IQ trash talk from Chimaev, where he tries his best and then says, I will fuck Dricus, and then he just screams wildly because he realizes that he sounds retarded and that all he has is just going, and like trying to be scary. And you know what I mean? It's just going to be a fucking awesome build-up. Cannot wait for this fight. But let's talk about Jon Jones real quick. Now, I won't feign outrage about this shit because it's not surprising. And for me to be outraged, there has to be some kind of element of surprise there. But is anybody really shocked that this is happening, that Islam Makachev is forced to vacate / stripped? I'm not too sure the scenario. While Jon Jones is being allowed to hold on to his title. Like, is anyone surprised here? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that Jon Jones 100% has videos on his phone. He has blackmail pertaining to Dana White involving, some compromising situation involving potentially anal beads, butt plugs. You know what I mean? Like these types of devices, I can only imagine. So obviously Jon Jones won't get stripped, and I also believe that all of this propping up Jon Jones as this artificial GOAT is sort of a backhanded way of also tearing down Ngannou's legacy and trying to just erase him from the scene altogether and just have people forget about Ngannou's legacy and the fact that he actually may be the best heavyweight of all time. But then again, I'm not surprised. Jon Jones is clearly on some kind of a bender, having a great time in Thailand. Just looking at that look on his face, I recognize that look, dude. In my partying days when I was a bit of a fiend at one point, I recognize that look on his face, and this man is barely on planet Earth, at least in this moment in the video. So I don't see this man fighting anytime soon or at all. I honestly do think that he's icing out the entire heavyweight division for his own personal gain. And I think it's ridiculous that the UFC is allowing it. It only takes away from the legitimacy of the sport, of the organization, and just is a net negative, right? And I think in the long run, Jon Jones will regret this stage of his career. I think he will regret the way that he handled it, because I think ultimately, even though he'll be sitting on piles and piles of cash, if he really does care about his legacy, I believe that he will be left unsatisfied with how he ended off his career. I do believe so.
I didn't read it. I told you guys already. We'll get Aspinall versus Jones done. Jon Jones versus the heavyweight fight will happen. Just relax. I'll announce that soon.
And as shown at the beginning of the video, Dana White did kind of confirm at one point that Tom versus Jones is going to be announced soon, but then he starts talking about Jones versus and then he kind of cuts himself off and doesn't reveal who Jones is going to fight, and then he says the heavyweight fight will be announced soon. The heavyweight fight, so a very non-specific heavyweight fight. Jones versus who exactly? Honestly, I'm not sure. I honestly do think that the fight that'll be announced may actually end up being Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, right? Imagine that is the fight that's announced. Would that be exciting? I mean, namesake-wise, sure. It would have been a lot more exciting before Alex Pereira lost his belt to Ankalaev, so I honestly don't really care for it, and I think Jon Jones just does whatever he wants to Alex Pereira on the ground. They're just light years apart as far as grappling skill and experience. I see Alex Pereira only having a puncher's chance in that one, and I don't see that puncher's chance being enough, really. And that's the exact type of fight that Jon Jones wants, that he said he wants, and that's exactly why I think this will be the fight that's announced. And I think that the other fight that'll be announced will be Tom Aspinall potentially versus Ciryl Gane, right? Because that's been what all the murmurings are about. Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane, and then Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. And I kind of have a feeling that fight won't even have a belt attached to it. It might just be some kind of a super fight, a big retirement fight for Jon Jones to get another big name on the resume before he retires, and then Aspinall and Ciryl Gane will fight it out for the heavyweight title. That's my personal prediction. I think that's what's going to happen. But then again, I want Jon Jones and Tom to be announced. I want it to be announced so badly, but at the same time, I just don't have faith in this company to deliver. And before we finish the video here, I would like to quickly speak on the Islam Makachev being a duck, right? And successfully ducking Ilia Topuria, right? That whole situation here. And do I think that he is a duck? No. I don't think that he is outright ducking Ilia because he's afraid of Ilia in particular, but I do think that he prefers the risk moving up to 170 rather than going up against a former 145er. And he's already laid it out a million times, right? His manager, Khabib, everyone says the exact same bullshit over and over again that retards online, troglodytes online, will say, you just beat another one. You've heard it a billion fucking times to the point where this excuse is just tired and lazy and boring and no one gives a shit about it, but they will continue to bring it up, right? But he is moving up to a heavier weight class. And I do believe that risk, it's just more palatable for Islam because he knows that asterisk won't really be there, right? If he does actually manage to win that second belt, it is ultimately very good for his legacy, of course it is. And the risk, I believe he's more willing to take that risk against the bigger man because he won't be clowned as much than if he was to lose to the smaller man in Ilia. And of course, he recognizes the threat that Ilia brings and the timing of him deciding that he now wants to move up to 170, the second that Ilia decided he wanted to move up to 155, right after Islam made that speech challenging anyone who can make 155. Yes, a very convenient timing for Islam to move up, and there's no really denying that at the end of the day. But I've already spoken on it, but I wanted to give my opinion. Do I think that Islam is a duck? Not necessarily, but I do think that he was avoiding the fight against Ilia for the reasons that he laid out. And I believe him for the reasons that he laid out. Do I agree with those reasons? Do I think that they're stupid? No and yes. I think they're dumb as shit, and I don't agree with his reasons. But at the end of the day, at least the 155-pound division can move on. The 170 division is very interesting right now. And whatever. Hopefully at some point in the future we get Islam versus Ilia. I think the only way for that to happen, maybe Ilia beats Charles Oliveira. Maybe he defends his belt again. Potentially Islam beats JDM. I don't think that happens, but maybe if he beats JDM, Ilia will then move up to challenge Islam for his belt, or maybe Islam moves back down to challenge Ilia. I think that's the only scenario where we get this fight, because I think Islam fails to beat JDM, we might actually see him retire. But at the end of the day, my guess is as good as yours, and those are my thoughts on the announcements that came out last night. Big fight announcements. Cannot wait for some of these upcoming fights. Absolute bangers. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.